Good afternoon. I am Pranjali and I will be discussing Swati Chattopadhyay's essay, The Other Side of Primitive Accumulation, The Garden House in the British Colonial Bengal, and how it provided a framework for analysis for the bungalows of Jamshedpur. Swati Chattopadhyay's essay offers an insight into how the garden house acquired meaning by locating the bungalow in the political context of Bengal in the late 18th and early 19th century. Chattopadhyay connects the emergence of the garden house to the permanent settlement of Bengal of 1793. The permanent settlement, which fixed a revenue for land in Bengal, Orissa, and Bihar, expropriated farmers from their land and established zamindars as the true landowners. In the process of what is called primitive accumulation, these farmers, who were primary producers, were cut off from their main source of production and self sustenance, making them tenants who had to pay exorbitant revenue to the zamindars. The other side that Chattopadhyay talks about in the title of her essay refers to the subsequent manifestation of primitive accumulation as a form of the elite residence, the garden house. She discusses how the prosperity acquired due to the permanent settlement attributed to the emergence of the garden house in countryside Bengal. The feudal setup, which was aimed at the cultivation of cash crops, especially indigo, generated surplus remuneration for the planters and zamindars, who used it to build garden houses and furnishing them with European goods, thus benefiting the British market. As a result of a successful capitalist market, the British also built garden houses as rural retreats and weekend houses. These lavishly and furnished and designed garden houses were set in large areas spanning acres of land, which consisted of fish and duck ponds, deer parks, orchards, greenhouses, aviaries, and play fields, with numerous outhouses to accommodate domestic help to take care of the estate. Swati Chattopadhyay discusses the distinction between the cultural imagination of the garden house between the British and Bengali elite. She achieves this upon corroborating from various examples of how the garden house acquired meanings in different ways. For the British, it was a symbol of an improved estate, an improvement bestowed upon the rural landscape of Bengal with its grandeur and economic value of land. For the Bengali, it became a site of conspicuous consumption, of very noticeable overindulgence by the indolent sons of zamindars who used garden houses for sensual pleasures and consumed the produce from land exploitatively. Chattopadhyay's essay opens up a window to analyze the bungalows of Jamshedpur. The key connect between the bungalow and garden house is that they are situated within a well-defined compound and are not seen as standalone structures but within their setting, context, and neighborhood. Analyzing the garden house within its political and cultural context challenges one to draw connections to the bungalows of Jamshedpur, which are not necessarily parallel. But it enables a discussion in that direction and provides a lens to either compare or contrast the aspects that lend meaning to the structures as the residence of the elite. While the emergence of the garden house stems from a political background and a feudal setup, the bungalows of Jamshedpur are a result of an administrative hierarchy. The development of northern town in the first phase of Jamshedpur's development was aimed at accommodating high-ranking officials of TISCO. The bungalows were detached within a large compound and the company houses had a sense of uniformity to them. The study of the bungalows using Swati Chattopadhyay's framework reveals the differences of how the bungalows were occupied and perceived. The male sociability that emerged from the weekend indulgence in the garden houses contrasts to the very domestic nature in which the bungalows of Jamshedpur developed and how women of the houses adapted to the living in Jamshedpur. The outhouses of the bungalows follow a similar function in both the garden house and the bungalow in creating a separation between social and functional aspects of domesticity. While Chattopadhyay distinguishes between the imagination of garden house between the Bengali and the British, Jamshedpur offers a different insight in how the bungalow acquired meaning as a company bungalow and private bungalow that followed after the land was leased for private endeavors. The D-type bungalow is one of the typological houses built by TISCO for its employees. Situated in the northern town of Jamshedpur, the bungalow, like others in the neighborhood, is marked by a well-defined boundary. The entrance is lined with an avenue of shrubs and the periphery with trees. The house is situated approximately at the center of the plot with a lawn in the front edged with flowering plants or short hedges. The rear end between the main residence and the outhouse, a patch of vegetable garden is cultivated. The example of the D-type bungalow highlights the relationship of the house with the garden and outhouses. According to Anthony King, the bungalow must not be seen in isolation but perceived as an ensemble along with its site and context. The bungalows of Jamshedpur were detached pakka structures which were well set back in the compound, leaving scope for gardening and landscaping around it. The idea was to create a well spaced out compound which ensured privacy, prevented congestion, and offered protection against epidemics. The bungalows in especially the northern town had a lot of prestige and status attached to it, accommodating high ranking officials of the company. The example of the C2 type bungalow, another type of company accommodation allotted for Tisco employees, is used to highlight the various spaces within the house and how certain spaces lend themselves to various social conducts. Though the C2 type sits within a large defined compound like the D type, the internal spaces vary. While in the D type, the central room is used interchangeably as living or dining room, the C2 type bungalow has separate rooms for both functions. Through this additional room, it could be speculated that the residents of the house hosted guests frequently and could be of a higher ranking in the company. The rear end of the bungalow opens towards the outhouses and the back gate leading to the conservancy lane, which functions like a service road. The attached privies of the bedrooms opened up at the rear end for waste to be taken out through the conservancy lane. One of the most striking features of the bungalow is the large veranda. The veranda was a space used for both formal and informal purposes, just like the garden. While the male members of the family used it for conducting meetings outside offices, the space was predominantly used by women to come together and indulge in collective activities like needlework or playing bridge. According to Tisco Review, Mrs. Keenan, wife of General Manager John Keenan, often hosted bridge and tea parties in the veranda and gardens of the General Manager's bungalow for women when the men went to the clubs to indulge in games, drinks, and conversation. Irrespective of the type of building, residences, or clubs, the function of the veranda was of importance to the sociability of Jamshedpur. Outhouses played a significant role in the colonial imagination of a bungalow. They were built to not only accommodate the families of domestic help who served the residents of the bungalow, but also as kitchens. The idea of separating functions of the bungalow was to cut out the smell from the cooking and noise from the servants' quarters, which explained the openings of the outhouses not facing the bungalow. The outhouses generally open up onto the conservancy lane at the rear end of the bungalow. In the C2 type discussed previously, the compound houses two outhouses. The number of outhouses situated the prosperity of the resident. Most bungalows in the northern town have outhouses, corroborating that the bungalows in this area were indeed the houses of the elite. Based on the C1 type bungalow, this bungalow, built between 1915 and 1920, is the only residential building that was double-storied during the early 20th century in Jamshedpur. Set in a neatly manicured lawn, as seen today, the bungalow has spaces on the ground floor similar to the C2 type, the only difference being a kink in the organization of the spaces in the latter. What makes the bungalow interesting is the first floor. Approached through the entrance at the side of the bungalow, the staircase lobby forms a separate entity than the rest of the bungalow, uninterrupted by the other domestic spaces of the house. It leads to the ballroom on the first floor. In a time and place where social dancing was limited to clubs, the presence of a room as such was an indication to the uniqueness, wealth, and influence of the resident. The room was designed to maximize comfort of guests. The external wall was a ventilated cavity wall, of feature neither seen elsewhere in the house nor anywhere in Jamshedpur, to insulate during hotter months, and two fireplaces to keep the room warm during the winters. This type of house does not make an appearance anywhere else in Jamshedpur. The northern town developed as the first neighborhood with accommodation for covenanted officers who had arrived from America and Europe. Planned in a grid pattern of the American cities, the town was designed for those accustomed to the Western style of living, as discussed in previous examples. The figure ground indicates a chunk of land in the northern town dotted with bungalows of various footprints that are well spaced out, set within a compound. It was suggested during the planning that not more than 12 bungalows would be constructed in an acre. The different typologies and various areas of the bungalow compounds demarcate different hierarchies of plots within the highly paid strata of employees, the largest compounds belonging to the general manager and the director. The bungalows in northern town were allotted and leased to officers for the duration of their term, at the end of which the bungalows changed hands. The point to note is that irrespective of the area of land and size of house, the company accommodation was designed as a combined unit of a garden and bungalow. Swati Chattopadhyay lays out two conditions that make a garden house desirable: the ensemble of the garden, bungalow and outhouse, and the proximity to other garden houses, both of which are observed in the bungalows of the northern town, corroborating from the examples discussed up till now. With a shift in land policies after 1928, contractors started investing in leasing land from the company for private construction. Located in the contractors area of Jamshedpur, the Patel Mansion was built in 1937 in the Art Deco style. The bungalow is an example of the free will of design, unlike the company bungalows that had to follow a specific, neat but uniform style of construction and minimal embellishment. The Patel Mansion is a contradiction to the design language. The house, designed by an architect invited from Calcutta, employs a number of interesting construction techniques and materials. The flooring is made from the mother of pearl tiles, and the extensive use of marble is observed in fireplaces, bathtubs, and flooring. Clearly designed to symbolize a particular stature in society and a token of prosperity, emphasis was placed minutely on details like concealing wiring and choice of furniture. Unlike the company house, the Patel Mansion was designed for a joint family, as evident from the statements of the residents and multiple entrances of the bungalow. From the first image, it is visible that the garden of the Patel Mansion has fallen in disrepair and neglect. As observed in Tisco bungalows, the private bungalows are not fronted with gardens. In the Jingan Villa, the limited space around the plot did not allow for a garden. From these examples, it is evident that the gardens lost their significance as privatization happened. The success of the Tisco bungalow gardens still being in good shape is attributed to the garden department that continues to help maintain gardens in the company allotment, a privilege not extended to the private residents. It is interesting to note that while the company bungalows brought a sense of uniformity to the landscape of northern town, the bungalows indeed become the house of the elite by the virtue of factors discussed. The Patel Mansion, with its extravagant use of materials, building techniques, and scale of the building, lends another facet of how a bungalow acquires meaning. In case of the Jingan Villa, it is aspiration to live in a bungalow that corroborates to the bungalow as a house of the elite. While Swati Chattopadhyay does not necessarily examine such examples, her quest to understand various ways how the garden house acquires meaning enables an investigation of how else the bungalows in Jamshedpur could have acquired meaning.